Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into the perspective of Palestinian lawyer and analyst Diana Buttu, breaking down a recent talk she gave at the Doha Forum about Palestinian leadership, external plans, and her own vision for what liberation really means. Right from the start, Diana Buttu frames her entire argument in her personal reality. And as you can see from this quote, she describes this constant state of threat. But for her, this isn't just random harassment. She sees it as a deliberate effort to silence Palestinian voices. This personal context is completely inseparable from the political one. So her first major theme is this whole idea of a voice under threat, where she really describes what she sees as a systematic effort to quash Palestinian perspectives. Okay, so from that very personal context, Buttu then zooms out to the international stage to analyze what she calls the Trump plan. And she argues it's not a peace plan at all, but really a framework for external control. Here's how she defines it. She's really clear that, in her view, this isn't some American-led initiative. She sees it as fundamentally an Israeli plan that was just given an American brand name. And for her, that distinction is absolutely critical to understanding what its real goals are. Now, this number is pretty striking. 90 seconds. According to Buttu, that is the total amount of time that Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas spent discussing this plan with President Trump. She uses this one single detail to paint a picture of just how excluded Palestinians were from a process that was supposed to determine their entire future. And this slide really breaks down what she sees as the core imbalance of the plan. She argues that for Israel, it offers concrete guarantees, actual power, a veto. And for Palestinians, well, you get this vague, conditional aspiration to a state. And it all depends on reform. So in her analysis, there are zero guarantees for Palestinians, only a list of requirements. So when you boil it all down, her main criticism is that the plan was basically designed to fail Palestinians right from the start. She sees it as a kind of colonial-era framework, put together without their input, and then accepted by a leadership that, in her view, has become complicit. And this leads her directly into her next big point, a deep crisis of leadership, which she argues is being fueled by both external pressures and, well, internal stagnation. First, she points to what she describes as a systematic Israeli strategy to just remove Palestinian political figures from the equation. She claims this isn't really about security, but about actively decapitating any potential for a unified political leadership to emerge. And as a prime example, she brings up Marwan Barghouti. He's been imprisoned by Israel for 23 years, and Buttu frames him as a Mandela-like figure, a unifying leader whose imprisonment, she argues, is fundamentally political and a huge obstacle to any kind of representative future. And then you've got the internal challenge. I mean, this timeline really lays it out. The Palestinian Authority's democratic mandate has expired. The last elections were way back in 2015 and 2016. So Buttu's point is that this creates a massive legitimacy gap. The result of all this, as Buttu sees it, is that the international community is focused on a very small, unrepresentative leadership. This focus on the PA, she says, completely ignores the voices of the vast majority of Palestinians who live outside the areas it actually governs. So, faced with this external plan and an internal leadership vacuum, Buttu's solution isn't to just find a new negotiator. It's a call for disruption, to fundamentally change the game itself. Now, this is a pretty provocative point. Buttu argues that the Oslo peace process back in the 1990s was a huge strategic mistake. Why? Because it took Palestinians off a path of active disruption, things like the First Intifada, and instead channeled all that energy into a negotiation process where, she believes, others held all the power. So her core thesis really boils down to this clear three-step call to action. First, stop being complicit in processes that exclude you. Second, you have to actively disrupt the status quo instead of trying to work within its rules. And third, push authentic voices to the forefront to reclaim the narrative. It's a call to seize agency, not to ask for it. And finally, Buttu moves from all this stark political analysis to something deeply personal, her own vision of what liberation actually looks like on the ground. You know, as she says here, this vision isn't just some political goal off in the distance. It's a necessary, daily act of mental survival that allows her to keep doing her work. For Buttu, liberation isn't about flags or states. As this slide shows, it's about the simplest human freedoms, like friends from Gaza being able to come and visit her at home, something that's basically impossible right now.
It's about her best friend from Ramallah, which is just a short drive away, but might as well be on another planet, being able to come share a meal in her home. It's about erasing those invisible walls that separate people.
And finally, her ultimate vision is one of normality. It's the freedom to be known not for conflict or suffering or politics, but for excellence, for art, for science, for culture. To just be, without constantly having to justify your own existence. So in the end, Buttu doesn't leave us with a neat answer. She leaves us with a question. By sharing her own deeply personal vision, she's really challenging all of us to think beyond the political frameworks and just ask ourselves, what does liberation truly look like on a human scale?